Wow, this one's been a long time coming, but with Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake getting released a few months after my Dragon Quest II vs Final Fantasy II video, I figured I'd wait and make it a bit more of an even playing field. The Switch versions of Dragon Quests 1 to 3 are pretty much the worst versions of those games, and the Pixel Remasters in my opinion are really well done so far. Now that I've played through all of Dragon Quest III HD 2D as well as Final Fantasy III Pixel Remaster, I think I'm ready to review, compare and contrast the two, and find out which is better. Also, to those of you wondering if I'll be redoing my Dragon Quest I vs Final Fantasy I and Dragon Quest II vs Final Fantasy II videos after their HD 2D remakes come out, well, it depends. If I feel that they make enough changes and updates to the game to where they should be redone, I'll definitely consider it, but if not, I'll be doing a review of Dragon Quest I and II HD 2D Remake on its own instead. If you enjoy these videos or just enjoy JRPG content here on YouTube, you can help me reach my goal of 5,000 subscribers by making sure to like, subscribe, and share this video around. If you'd like to make sure you don't miss a video, make sure to turn notifications to all. Now let's begin. Dragon Quest III originally came out in Japan back in 1988, just a few months after the first Final Fantasy. It was released as Dragon Warrior 3 here in North America in 1992, and would set the standard for JRPGs to come. Dragon Quest III tied into the first two games' story as a chapter in what would be known as the Erdrick Trilogy. The evil Baramos has been attacking the world, and it's up to the son of the great hero Ortega to save it. Your father Ortega had perished while fighting Baramos' minions, so you're out to both save the world and find out what happened to your father. Much like Final Fantasy I, Dragon Quest III would allow you to create your own party from scratch and choose from multiple different vocations or classes. The classes in the original Dragon Quest III were Soldier or Warrior, Pilgrim or Cleric, Fighter, Wizard or Mage, Merchant or Dealer, Goof-Off or Jester, and eventually, if you got the Book of Satori or Zen book, you could become a powerful sage. They also added the Thief class in the Game Boy Color and Super Famicom remakes, and the Monster Wrangler in the HD 2D remake. Once you've reached All Trades Abbey and level 20 in your respective class, you could then change classes to whichever ones are available to you. You then start back at level 1, but it halves all your current stats, and you get to keep all of your spells and abilities that you'd already learned. This made for tons of customization and replayability, and you could develop a fairly OP party if you're willing to put the time in. For this video, I'll be playing the HD 2D remake as it's the most accessible and best version of the game right now. Let's get to the adventure itself.
Yo, she-bitch. Let's go.
As the game opens up, you'll be treated to a series of personality tests and questions used to determine you, the hero's personalities. Personalities in Dragon Quest III determines a character's stat gains upon level up, thus determining the hero's playstyle. Once your mom wakes you up, you learn that it's your 16th birthday, and time to meet the king before setting off in your quest to defeat Baramos and avenge the death of your father. After the king gives you the absolute bare minimum, it's off to Patty's to create our party. For my playthrough, I started off mostly as I always do, with a priest, a martial artist, and this time, I chose the new class, the Monster Wrangler. You can ask the dude at the counter to recommend the personality for your characters, or put the seeds in yourself to boost the specific stats and get the personality you think would suit that character best. Then it's off to your first part of the adventure, the village of Reeve. There you learn about the Thief's Key and head off to the Dreamer's Tower. After sneaking into the tower from underground, you climb to the top where an old man awaits and rewards you with the much needed Thief's Key. This key allows you to open any of the red doors that were previously locked, meaning you can now enter the house in the northeast of Reeve to get your hands on the giant bomb known as the Wrecking Ball, which is used to blast a hole in the wall in the Path to Promise, giving you access to the first Traveler's Gate or Teleportal. After reaching the other side, you go to leave the area and are encountered by a slime and an old man named Monty who tells you about monster wrangling and the monster arena. You recruit your first monster, Splatrick the Slime, and head off into the new land of Ramaria. The kingdom of Ramaria is in a bit of a pickle. The king's crown has been stolen, and people throughout the town don't have a lot of great things to say about their current king. He'd rather spend his days at the monster arena and gambling than running the kingdom. But it's up to you to head north and seek out his missing crown. To the north, you'll find the sleeping village of Norvik that was put under a spell by the Fairy Queen, as well as the secret fairy village. After speaking with the Fairy Queen, you learn of the fairy's hatred for humans and how her daughter has shamed her by falling in love with a human boy from Norvik, which is why she put the village under a sleeping spell for eternity. In retaliation for this, her daughter, Anus Seed?
What?
Stole the Dreamstone, one of the sacred treasures of the fairies, and ran off with her human boyfriend, never to be seen again. The queen, of course, blames the human boy and tells you to get out of their village. Nearby, you find a cave which leads to an underground lake. As you explore the caverns, you discover a lone treasure chest in the center of the lake. After opening it, you find not only the Dreamstone, but a letter left behind by the fairy princess. The letter informs you that after their love was deemed forbidden, the two lovers decided if they couldn't be together in this life, then perhaps they could be together forever in the next, and both drowned together in the lake. Wow. This is probably the first time in an NES-era game where the developers really don't pull any punches and hit you with a burst of emotion in a twist out of nowhere. Unfortunately, it's now up to you to pass this information on to the Fairy Queen. After breaking the Queen's heart with this knowledge, she thanks you for returning the Dreamstone and gives you the Wakey Dust to awaken the townspeople of Norvik from their eternal slumber. It's what, Aniseed would have wanted. Why did they name her Aniseed, bro? Why? Now that you've saved the village of Norvik, it's time to locate the King of Romaria's crown. You continue heading west across the bridge to discover the Skyfell Tower, where a band of thieves led by the dastardly Robin Hood is hanging out. After getting tricked by them, you track them down again within the tower and beat their asses to get back the crown. I honestly love Robin Hood, so I always let this bastard off easy.
Fool me once. Shame on you. If fool me, we can't get fooled again.
You then return the crown to the king, and he lets you rule the kingdom of Romaria if you'd like, so he can frig off and watch the monster arena battles. After returning the crown to the king of Romaria, it's time to head east, toward the kingdom of Ibis. On your way, however, you'll find yourself in the sketchy town of Asham, where people will try ripping you off if you aren't careful. If you come here at night, a sexy lady will offer you a sensual puff-puff, but only if you go alone with her and turn off the lights. I'll leave out the details here so you can experience it for yourselves if you haven't before. You're in for a real treat. After spending the evening with the Lady of the Night, it's off to the Great Desert to the southwest. Making your way through the treacherous desert, you see the kingdom of Ibis next to what appears to be some sort of oasis. You meet with the queen, who warns you about the traps and curses in both the catacombs beneath her palace, as well as within the Great Pyramid to the north. Completely ignoring her warnings, you head off for treasure, first to the catacombs below, then it's off to the Great Pyramid itself. The Great Pyramid can be an absolute nightmare to traverse. I'd say most of the chests are mimics, and there are pits and switches everywhere. As you explore the pyramid, you'll come across the inner chamber, where the Ripper of the Rift guards the magic key. You beat his ass and head deeper into the pyramid to reach a room filled with treasure. This room has a ton of great equipment and items, but every single chest comes with a battle. It can be a bit of a nightmare, but the worst is yet to come. After clearing the pyramid itself of all its treasure, you can enter the secret catacombs beneath to obtain the Golden Claw, which is by far the best weapon for a martial artist at this point in the game. But there's a catch. Its previous owner puts a curse on you, so every 2 to 3 steps will result in a guaranteed monster battle for the entire journey out. Oh yeah, and you can't use any magic down here, so good luck.
Naturals! By God, every one of you is naturals! We're gonna fucking die.
After obtaining the magic key and desecrating the burial sites of the ancestors of Ibis, you can now use the Traveler's Gate to the northwest of Romaria and reach the coastal kingdom of Portoga. The King of Portoga wants some precious pepper from the east and gives you a letter allowing you passage through Nordy's Grotto. You're also told that you are the second person who has set about on this quest for him, the other being another man from Eliahan, your father Ortega. So it's off to Baharata, where you find out that the pepper salesman's granddaughter has been kidnapped. Where in the world could she have been taken? There's a cave nearby called Kidnapper's Cave.
Mr. Crusher, set course to
Kidnapper's Cave.
Warbait.
Aye, sir.
Kidnapper's Cave can be an absolute shit show to navigate. But with the HD 2D remake adding mini dungeon maps, it's so much more manageable. You end up discovering that it was Robin Hood behind the kidnapping, making us kinda responsible for letting him go.
If fool me, we can't get fooled again.
So we beat his ass again, and due to his lovability, I let him run free again. I mean, come on! Robin Hood may be an asshole, but he is our asshole.
If fool me, we can't get fooled.
As thanks for saving his granddaughter, you're given the pepper in Baharata to take back to the King of Portoga, where you can finally get your hands on a boat, baby. Now you've got pretty much the whole world at your disposal. First things first, it's off to All Trades Abbey near Baharata to change classes and hit up the nearby tower to grab the Words of Wisdom, allowing you to change one of your characters into a sage. So we grind our asses off in the tower and switch classes, then set off on the high seas. Before setting sail, you're visited by a voice, which tells you about the 6 orbs that you must obtain in order to defeat the Archfiend Baramos. These orbs are scattered throughout the world, so it's up to you to track them down with your newly obtained ship. You begin scouring the world for the orbs. You find one in a haunted village, one near a pirate's den, and one in Gaia's pit, which can only be traversed with a single party member. On your journey, you'll find a small settlement that you can help grow into a bustling city, using a merchant to help run the shops and eventually take over the town. After completing this town story, you'll be given the yellow orb. That leaves 2 more. While traveling the world, you'll eventually come across the kingdom of Minoza, where the king has recently been acting like a complete D-bag, and his people now fear him. After sneaking into his castle and eventually getting arrested, you break out of your cell and find the real king of Minoza locked up in the dungeon. He tells you that in order to free the kingdom of Minoza from this awful imposter, you must journey to the cave in the south and find Ra's mirror. A powerful mirror that'll reveal someone's true form once peered into. In the cave, you find yourself getting beat up by mimics, but eventually make your way to Ra's mirror and then back to Minoza, where you face off against the boss troll who had somehow disguised himself as the king. Lay down the absolute smackdown on his ass and free the kingdom of Minoza from despair. He also gives you the mod rod once defeated. Now it's off to Japan, a land that has been plagued by an evil and powerful Orochi. The Orochi has been demanding human sacrifices, but now that you're in town, it's time to put a stop to this madness. The townspeople claim that the only person able to keep the Orochi at bay has been Queen Pimiko, but it's her who's been requiring the sacrifices in order to do so. With this knowledge, it's off to speak to Queen Pimiko as you try getting to the bottom of this. Unfortunately, Queen Pimiko is racist as hell and tells you that foreigners are not welcome in Japan, and she refuses to speak to barbarians. Thankfully, much like the kidnapper's cave, there's a suspicious looking cave nearby, and inside that bitch lies the Orochi itself. Inside the Orochi's cave, you find the altar where the human sacrifices have been made. Damn. Let's make that multi-headed Dagron pay. After slapping the Hydra's heads around, you return back to Japan to find Queen Pimiko all beat up and bleeding. Turns out Pimiko was the Orochi all along, and the real Pimiko was one of its first victims. She tries to make you an offer to spare your life if you promise not to tell anyone of her true form, but you tell her to shove it up her ass and finish her off once and for all.
Blow it out your ass.
After her dramatic death, she leaves behind the purple orb. Only one orb left, baby. In order to gain access to the cavern that leads to Baramos' area, you must get your hands on the Mountain Cleaver's sword. In order to get our hands on that, we gotta trade the mod rod we got from the boss troll for the Boatsman's Bone up north in Grimland. With the Boatsman's Bone, you now have access to the ghost ship. So we board the ghost ship, learn about the sad past of the people aboard, and get our hands on the Lover's Locket, which will allow us access to the inner sea past Olivia's promontory. Once inside this formerly protected sea, you can go to the Shrine of Shackles and finally get your hands on the Mountain Cleaver's sword. With this sword, we can head to Mount Necrogon to chuck the sword into the volcano and face off against the Garboil, the very villain who took out your father Ortega years ago. It's time for our revenge, damn it. Show no mercy to this demon and send him to his spicy grave within the volcano itself. Once you've thrown the Mountain Cleaver into the volcano and beaten Garboil, the volcano erupts, making a path to the Maw of the Necrogond. The Maw of the Necrogond is a treacherous journey, but once you reach the other side, Baramos' castle is in view. Unfortunately, your ship has no access here, but there is a small shrine nearby where you finally get your hands on the last of the orbs. Grab the silver orb and hightail it to the Shrine of the Everbird. It's here that you use all 6 orbs in order to catch the godbird herself, Ramia. Now you can take to the skies and gain access to areas you couldn't before, including Baramos' castle. Baramos' castle is cloaked in eternal darkness, and as you explore it, you'll find a corpse waiting on what you thought would be Baramos' throne, which means we've got to delve even deeper. You finally locate the true throne room and meet up with the almighty Archfiend himself. Baramos goes on about how coming here was a death wish, and that any and all who have stepped foot in this castle have fallen, and you will be no different. It's time to prove this dirty old wizard wrong, by way of Mortal Kombat! Baramos is tough as nails and has the ability to yuck your party members out of battle, so make sure you pour it on heavy once his health starts to get low. After a grueling boss fight, you prove to be victorious. You've saved the world from the Archfiend's grasp. It's time to let your king in Aliahan know of your success. Back in Aliahan, you announce your victory to the king, and the people begin to celebrate their newfound freedom from evil. You have succeeded where your father Ortega had failed before you. But before the celebrations can really get started, a powerful being wrapped in a cloak of darkness appears before you all in the throne room, stating that as long as he lives, the world will never escape despair.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
He refers to himself as Zoma, the bringer of oblivion, and says that now the world will know true torment. Well, so much for the victory tour. The king makes you all promise to never tell anyone about what's happened here, in order to save the people from living in constant fear once again. You awaken in the middle of the night to let your mom know that you're going to take it upon yourself to head out in search of this Zoma and put an end to the darkness once and for all. She tells you how incredibly proud of you she is, and says how she just doesn't want to lose you like she lost your father Ortega. You go back to sleep and a new castle is revealed on the map. After taking flight on the back of Ramia, you find yourself in the Dragon Queen's castle. You speak to the Dragon Queen, who tells you everything she knows about Zoma in hopes that it helps you to defeat him. She says how he dwells in the depths of the underworld, and that the only way to get there is by heading to the island next to Baramos' castle. She then passes away and leaves behind an egg that'll hatch into another all-powerful dragon someday. Her followers promise to look after the egg as you obtain the Sphere of Light from the Dragon Queen's remaining life source and head off towards the Pit of Giaga. Once you arrive, you find a cavernous area swallowed up by the darkness. Using the Sphere of Light, the darkness is pushed back to reveal a gaping crevice said to lead to the underworld itself. The hero and his party take a deep breath and leap into the unknown land below, as this is the only hope for salvation. After passing through the underworld, you land in what appears to be someone's backyard. The man whose yard you landed in welcomes you into his home and is impressed that you say you're planning on taking out the Lord of the Underworld, and that no one in all of Elefgard would ever dream of taking him on. And that's when it hits. Elefgard. Are we in Elefgard? The world from Dragon Quest I? The man offers you his ship and tells you to head east towards the kingdom of Tantagel, and gives you a map of the world. A map of Elefgard. That's right. Dragon Quest III has you revisit the world from the original Dragon Quest, but things are slightly different, and completely shadowed in darkness. You head off to Tantagel, where your journey began back in the first game. You go and speak to the king, who asks if you heard the name Ortega before, and then realizes that you are his son, and welcomes you to this land. He tells you that about 10 years ago, your father was carried into the castle and recovered there, but had lost most of his memories after the battle. Then one day, he simply disappeared. The king and townspeople are more than happy to help you with any information on your missing father, then tell you to set out on your way, but not before running into Robin Hood down here and getting your hands on the powerful Sunstone. On your journey, you visit the town of Damdara, which is now a fully built town filled with people and shops. Here you get your hands on the Orichalcum, which we'll need later. Then it's off to Cantlin, where you'll find the Broken Blade, a shattered version of Erdrick's sword used in both Dragon Quests 1 and 2. You then head to the nearby Shrine of the Spirit, where a fairy tells you that the goddess Rubis needs your help, as she's been sealed in the Tower of Rubis. Then hands you the Staff of Rain once she realizes that you're the son of Ortega. It's now off to Call, while stopping in Rimalder along the way. Call is pretty much as you remember it, but there's a swordmaster in town who fled Japang, and with the Orichalcum and the broken sword, he can repair it to create the Sword of Kings, the most powerful sword of legends. After obtaining the Sword of Kings, upgrading Ortega's helm to create the Auroral Helm, grabbing the Hero Shield, and obtaining the Fairy Flute, it's off to the Tower of Rubis to save the goddess. There's some sketchy floor tiles, puzzle shenanigans, and a boss fight, but after getting your hands on the legendary Auroral Armor, you make it to the top and play the Fairy Flute in order to set the Spirit of Rubis free. But before she can be released, the soul of Baramos stops you in your tracks and is out for revenge. Put this dude's soul to rest and save the goddess. Before you can finish him off, however, the soul of Baramos escapes to warn Zoma of your power. Rubis has been freed. She tells you that the only way to weaken Zoma is to use the Sphere of Light in his presence. She then tells you the means of how to reach Zoma's castle, and with this, it's off to create the Rainbow Bridge once more, and head to what we remember as Charlock Castle, the Dragon Lord's castle from Dragon Quests 1 and 2. You make your way into Zoma's castle, and just like before, you access the staircase behind the throne to enter the lower depths of the Citadel. You journey deeper and deeper until you reach a floor where you witness an epic battle being fought between a powerful axe-wielding warrior and the King Hydra, an unstoppable dragon. You recognize this warrior to be none other than your own father. Ortega yet lives. The hero and his party rush to reach him, but it's too late. Ortega is bested by the King Hydra right in front of your own eyes. The King Hydra flees to recover from its injuries, and you share in your father's final moments. He's been blinded and can't see you, but after being held in your arms and touching his old helmet in its new form, his memories return to him, and he says his farewells. He tells you how proud he is of you, and how he knows that you can succeed where he has failed, then passes on. Now, it's personal. The hero and their party press forward, not only to defeat Zoma, the Lord of the Underworld, but also for revenge against the King Hydra for defeating your father. They finally reach the floor where Zoma awaits, but like any slimy villain, Zoma calls upon his most powerful minions to stop you in your path. First up, the King Hydra. Man, it felt so good laying waste to this dragon. You continue down the hall towards Zoma, but are met by another one of his minions. The Soul of Baramos is here to try and stop you, but he'll fail as he has before, and you march onwards towards the Lord of the Underworld. Baramos' soul may have been put to rest, but what's left of his body yet lives and yearns for revenge. You take on your final obstacle before reaching Zoma, the Bones of Baramos. He's no joke, but with his newfound equipment and his friends at his side, the hero strikes him down once and for all. With what's left of Baramos out of the picture, it's time for Zoma to pay for his deeds. Immediately, the hero uses the Sphere of Light to remove the Veil of Darkness, protecting Zoma from harm. It's a treacherous battle, but one the hero and his party are capable of winning. In his defeat, Zoma tells you that wherever there is light, there shall be darkness, and that someday, someone else will take his place, in an era where you will no longer be around to protect the world. Then he vanishes, along with the darkness. His citadel collapses and the hero escapes to the cave near Tantagel. Once outside, light has returned to the land of Elefgard, and the monsters plaguing the land are no more. Their efforts are celebrated in Tantagel Castle, and you are given the legendary name of Erdrick the Hero. The credits roll and a scene plays out within the Dragon Queen's castle. One of the high priests who was tasked with watching over the egg left behind reveals himself to be Hargon, worshipper of Malroth, the god of destruction. All shall be revealed in the sequels to Dragon Quest III. Dragon Quests 1 and 2. That's right, baby. All this time, we were playing the prequel. The hero from the original Dragon Quest was in fact the descendant of Erdrick, the hero from Dragon Quest III. It was so cool to go back and experience the world of Elefgard once more, but this time, unknowingly in the past. Dragon Quest III is so damn good, especially for the time, and this HD 2D remake did an incredible job of retelling its story in glorious HD 2D. The post-game takes you to a castle in the heavens called the Cloudsgate Citadel. Atop it lies a mysterious dragon that'll grant you wishes once defeated, and one of these wishes is used to revive Ortega so that the hero's mother and Ortega can live happily ever after. In the, overworld. I guess if you made it this far, there's no point in giving out a spoiler alert, but look closely at the original world of Dragon Quest III, and you'll realize that it's not just some mystical fantasy world, but our own reality, Earth, that Dragon Quest III's hero is from. Just like us, the player, the hero journeys from our world into the underworld, or world of darkness, Elefgard, to once again save the day. I love the whole meta-ness of this concept, and it's one of the many reasons why the Dragon Quest franchise is my favorite of all time. But how will this entry compare against Final Fantasy's third outing? Let's take a look and see what that series had to offer next. Final Fantasy III took what the original did with job classes and ran with it. In this game, there are over 20 different job classes if you include the Onion Knight. Throughout this story, you'll be encountering the 4 crystals, and each one will give you access to new job classes. Not all job classes are created equal, but some of them also have field abilities, like the thief being able to pick locks on doors. This means you'll actually be swapping job classes in and out probably more in this game than in any other Final Fantasy game. As I mentioned, however, some job classes are just far superior to others, creating a pretty big balance issue with the classes. Sure, you're free to play through the game with whichever classes you'd like, but you're going to be at a massive disadvantage if you chose to play as like an evoker over something like a Dragoon, Black Belt, or Dark Knight. This does offer up a ton of replayability, but it also means your difficulty is going to vastly spike or decrease depending on if you've chosen the classes the game wants you to play as versus the ones you want to play as. There's even a few instances where you can't really deal any damage to some of the bosses unless your characters switch to a specific job class, which is honestly one of my least favorite things about this game. But enough about the job classes, let's get to the adventure itself. Much like Final Fantasy I, you start off by naming your characters, all of which look identical as Onion Knights in the opening, except for the color of their armor. A series of earthquakes shake the world, and 4 orphans fall into a sinkhole while exploring a nearby cave and stumble upon the Wind Crystal. The Wind Crystal speaks to them, gives them access to their first series of job classes, and explains how the light of the world is disappearing, which will disrupt the balance of the world. These 4 orphans are now the chosen warriors of light, who are to bring balance back to the world with their new powers given to them by the crystal. After escaping the cave, our newly appointed heroes head back to their hometown of to speak to Topapa, the man who raised them. He essentially tells them of their new responsibilities and wishes them well on their journey. Before leaving town, you load up on new weapons and armor to suit your new job classes and grab some magic as well. Magic in Final Fantasy III works like it did back in Final Fantasy I, where you have to learn each spell on each character, then they have a certain amount of casts available to them based on each level of spell. So as you level up your magic-based classes, you'll get access to more casts and higher levels of spells. I believe I mentioned it in my Dragon Quest 1 versus Final Fantasy 1 video, but I do actually prefer this method over actually using MP to cast spells. This is because you can freely cast weaker spells on your way throughout the dungeon without worrying about burning up MP, so your higher level spells will still have a full amount of casts available upon reaching a boss or tougher battle. In the next town, you find everyone here is a ghost, including Sid, who offers you his airship as long as you can reverse this curse set upon them by the Djinn. So you take his airship and head to the castle, only to be told that the princess has gone missing. Thankfully, with your new airship, you can just fly over to the sealed cave across the lake and rescue Sarah, who agrees to help you defeat the Djinn. Lay the smackdown on the Djinn to break the curse in Kazus. Back in Kazu, Sid will join you and upgrade your airship so you can drill through this boulder and get access to more of the world map. I gotta say, I love Sid's design in this game. He looks like a cute old wise man and wants nothing else than to return back to his worried wife. After smashing the boulder, your airship explodes, and Sid heads back home and tells you to go seek King Argus, who can help him build a new airship for you. In this town, you hear about a brave man named Desh, who went to Dragon's Peak, where the dragons roost. So you head off after him. At the top of the Dragon's Peak lies Bahamut, who is guaranteed to wreck your shit if you actually try to fight him. He checks you into his nest, where you find Desh hiding, and he joins you as you escape Bahamut's nest and gives you the mini spell. By jumping out of the nest, however, you end up on the opposite side of the mountain range and find a gnome village where you conveniently need to cast mini on your party in order to enter. This becomes the trope that I hate most in this game, where you constantly have to mini and toad your party members in order to gain access to certain areas to progress the story. Mini makes it so you can only deal any real damage with spells, which is ass, because if you're like me and hate mages, you're pretty much screwed while minied. You also have to change basically anyone who you want to deal damage to a magic casting class and hope they have offensive spells. Toad is even worse, because all you can do is a weak ass physical attack, but at least the toad looks hilarious, which makes it slightly cooler than being minied. Anyways, thanks to the people in the gnome village, you learn a way out of this area, so you go into the tunnel and find a band of Vikings that look more like pirates, who are willing to give you their ship if you defeat the sea dragon blocking their way to the open sea. After some more shenanigans where you need to mini your whole party to gain access to a dungeon where you beat the piss out of a rat and get the fang of water, then the sea dragon goes back to sleep. You now have access to the Viking ship, the Enterprise.
These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission, to explore strange new worlds.
With your new access to the sea, you find a vast desert and a small chocobo forest where you can get yourself a trusty steed. Grab a chocobo and head to the village of the Ancients, an ancient race of beings who apparently caused the flood of light and exiled themselves to this little village. They also reveal that all of what you can see on the world map is actually atop a floating continent in the sky. So you're basically on an Angel Island from Sonic the Hedgehog 3. You can go to Castle Argus, but there's currently nobody there. Instead, you head to the Tower of Owen, which, strangely enough, is filled with toads. Before you can progress, you'll need to head to the Gulgan Gulch to learn the toad spell and learn about the living forest, the great earthquake, and the crystals from a group of 80s New Wave fans at the bottom of the gulch. With the toad spell at hand, you turn everyone into toads so you can swim to the entrance of the Tower of Owen, where Desh gets a sense of familiarity about the place. Desh eventually regains his memories and is revealed to be an ancient himself. With Desh's help, you reach the top, where you encounter the Medusa, who tells you she's working for some D-bag named Zonde and that she plans to destroy the tower, sending the floating continent plummeting to its demise. So you beat her ass. Then Desh seemingly sacrifices himself to stabilize the mechanism that keeps the continent from falling, and also removes a whirlpool which had been blocking your access off from the rest of the world. I must jump into the incinerator! It's the only way! It's off to the Dwarven Hollows, where you learn that the Ice Horn had been stolen by some dickhead named Gutsko, who was working for Zonde. It's off to the subterranean lake to beat his ass and seemingly return the Ice Horns. Turns out, this whole thing was a trap set by Gutsko to get the dwarves to take down their magic barrier, giving him access to both of the dwarves' horns, which he steals, then frigs off to the fire crystal. Damn it, Gutsko! Foiled again! So I guess it's off to the nearby Molten Cave to get them back. At the bottom of the Molten Cave is the Fire Crystal Chamber, where Gutsko awaits and turns into the Diet Dragon Lord.
What the hell is even that?
Smack him down, grab the dwarves' horns back, and get some new job classes from the Fire Crystal, then return the horns to where they belong. Next, it's off to the village of Tokal, where you get shocked and captured by some dude named Hain and locked inside his castle within the Elder Tree of the Living Woods. After bursting out of your cell, it's off to face Haim himself to free the Elder Tree. Haim is a powerful mage, but once you defeat him, the Elder Tree frees everyone and returns to the Living Woods, where you receive the Fang of Wind. Now that the people of Argus are free from Haim's castle, you can head back to Argus Castle, where King Argus will gift you with the Wheel of Time to help Sid with the development of his new airship. Sid takes the Wheel of Time and turns the Enterprise into a convertible airship that can only land on water. With this, you can now fly off the floating continent and into the full world map below. This part was so cool to me, as it took the decently sized world that you had grown to know and makes it nothing but a floating island on the rest of the game's massive world map in comparison. Upon reaching the real world, you discover that a great flood caused by the earthquakes have covered the vast majority of the world in water. You're essentially
In a world covered by endless water.
and are told by some chick in a wrecked ship that a piece of the water crystal is buried deep underground in the Temple of Water. So off you go. Once you reach the bottom of the temple, you find the crystal shard and use it to open a locked door in a nearby dungeon, which leads to the water crystal chamber. You return the shard to the water crystal and are attacked by our old friend the Kraken from Final Fantasy I. He definitely looks a lot less intimidating than he did in the first game, and he definitely is a lot easier than he was in that one too. So you easily turn him into calamari and get some new flashy job classes. But not before this girl Arya, who is traveling with you, dies.
Who the fuck is that guy?
You now have some of the best job classes in the game, and likely won't be deviating from these until you get the 2 bonus classes from the side dungeon within the final dungeon. So enjoy playing as a Dragoon, a Black Belt, and a Dark Knight as another earthquake begins and a new continent raises from beneath the sea. You're trapped in the water chamber and black out, but awaken in a small village after being rescued. In this village you learn about the Warriors of Darkness, and how Goldor... No, not Goldar, Goldor! Anyways, Goldor's chained up your ship, so you've got to break it free before being able to set sail once more. Also, if you've been playing the pianos in the bars thus far, you'll be able to play one hell of a boogie in the bar here. After speaking to an old man and revealing yourselves to be the Warriors of Light, you find out there's a group of dudes who look like Hercule or Mr. Satan from Dragon Ball Z who also claim to be the Warriors of Light, and they decide to keep an eye on you. You sneak into the sewers, but find these fake Warriors of Light trapped and surrounded by, goblins. How can these guys believe themselves to be the Warriors of Light when they're afraid of a bunch of basic bitch goblins? Anyways, rescue their asses, and they'll realize they weren't the Warriors of Light after all, and they leave you to your journey. At the bottom of the path, you find this super ugly lady named Delilah, and the super Hercule bros rush in to prevent you from falling into one of her traps. They convince her to give you the Leathergrass shoes. Now it's time to deal with Goldor. After beating him up, however, Goldor takes it upon himself to destroy the final crystal before dying. The crystal's gone, but at least you can free your airship. So get back to your ship and explore this vast new world. While exploring, you'll come across a large city that proceeds to shoot down your airship. You become stranded in the kingdom of Saronia, which seems to be at war with itself? Most of the buildings in Saronia are locked due to the Civil War, and you find a new ally in the Prince of Saronia, Alice, and his old friends load you up with some good Dragoon gear that you use to face off against the powerful Garuda. The Garuda is one of Final Fantasy III's gimmick boss fights, where you almost need to have an entire party of Dragoons or somehow make tanky-ass magic users in order to be able to both hit and survive Garuda. The Garuda was controlling Alice's father, who gave his life to save him at the last second, and once you've defeated the Garuda, Prince Alice becomes the king and reunites the people of Saronia. After reuniting the people of Saronia, they gift you with the ancient airship Nautilus, which allows you to fly to Doga's Manor, which requires some more party mini bullshit in order to get to. The great sage Doga sends her Moogles to arrest you until she realizes that you are the Warriors of Light. Doga tells you about Une, and how she has the powers of the dreamscape, and how them, along with Zonde, served under the Master Noah. Zonde felt like he got screwed over when Noah made him mortal, so he rebelled, and made it his goal to try and destroy the world using the Earth Crystal to cause the Great Earthquake. Turns out Goldor's crystal was a fake Earth Crystal, and Doga joins you to help find the real Earth Crystal and prevent Zonde from bringing darkness to the world. With Doga, you head to the bottom of the ocean using the Nautilus' submarine abilities and grab Noah's loot. This loot is used to awaken Une from her dreams. Doga was able to inform her of what Zonde has been up to, and Une leads you to the location of where an ancient massive airship is. Together, you scour the ancient ruins and unearth the gigantic and powerful Invincible. This airship's not only gigantic, but has built-in shops, a place for the party to sleep and restore their health and magic, and it can also fly over large mountains, giving you access to new, previously unreachable areas. With this at your disposal, now is the perfect time to get all the summons before heading into the final dungeon. In Final Fantasy III, you can purchase the ability to summon each summon in the Summoner Village, but for the more powerful summons like Leviathan, Odin, and Baha Murr, you've got to locate and defeat the summons in battle. So get on out there and hunt them down. Odin honestly looks pretty badass and isn't too bad. Just kill him before he kills you. Leviathan can be rough with her tsunami attacks and looks a little haggard. Just smoke her with your thunder abilities and she'll be all yours, baby. Last but definitely not least is Bahamut. Get revenge for him scaring the ever-loving shit out of you earlier in the game, and he'll be yours to command as well. The Summoner job class kinda sucks ass, so let's get past all the cool looking seals and enter the final dungeon so we can sneak into the bonus dungeon and get our hands on the two bonus and, dare I say, best job classes. The Ninja and the Sage. The Ninja can dual wield weapons and deal a crap ton of damage by throwing shurikens. The Sage has access to all black and white magic as well as summons. So scour the bonus dungeon Eureka for some of the best weapons of the game and get your hands on these classes. Finally, you reach the Crystal Tower, which is massive and filled with a ton of difficult enemies. This place can be rough, so make sure you go in prepared. At the top of the tower, you gaze into a mystical mirror and become paralyzed and at the mercy of Zonde and the 5 worms in the room. Doga speaks to you from within and needs to gather 5 souls of light that can break the curse. So he quickly scours the world to round up Princess Sarah, Cid, Desh, Prince Alice, and one of the Hercule Bros whose pure hearts are enough to break the curse. Now it's time to put an end to Zonde and his shenanigans once and for all. You defeat Zonde, but it's too late, for the Cloud of Darkness has already been summoned, and it's way too powerful for the Warriors of Light alone to defeat. Your 5 friends with the pure light in their hearts enter the room to revive you, along with the spirits of Doga and Une. They reveal that Zonde has weakened the power of light so much that it has allowed the Cloud of Darkness to appear and send you to the World of Darkness to bring balance back to both worlds. Next, you kind of fight the 4 fiends of the World of Darkness and free the Warriors of Dark from the crystals in the Dark World. After freeing all 4 Warriors of Dark, it's time to team up and throw down with the almighty Cloud of Darkness. The Warriors of Darkness use their powers to suppress the Cloud of Darkness's powers, giving you the opportunity to face off against her in a much more fair fight. The Cloud of Darkness is fairly tough and has some powerful attacks, but with enough buffing and perseverance, you'll be able to take her down. After the Cloud of Darkness is defeated, the power of light and darkness are once again returned to balance, and the world is saved. What's nice is that in Final Fantasy III, you actually get to meet with all your friends once more in a victory lap, reminiscent of what you'd expect from the Dragon Quest game. This is always a nice touch after beating the final boss, and I really appreciated it. After seeing all your friends, Princess Sarah decides to come back with you to your hometown and live happily ever after. I honestly really enjoyed Final Fantasy III, much more than I was expecting to. It was fun to try out the big variety of job classes, whether they were very useful or not. The story was actually really well done, and the gameplay was like an improved version of Final Fantasy I, which I also loved. If you're a fan of classic NES era JRPGs, I'd put this right up there with the best of them. Now, I had played the original Famicom version before, and I hated it, so I'd stick to the Pixel Remaster if you're interested. The fun gameplay and sense of adventure do make up for most of its shortcomings, but I can't help but be continuously annoyed by all the times the game forces you to either change job classes or become Minnie or a Toad in order to progress the damn story. This happens way too often, and is tedious and frustrating. A game that changes the way job classes work in order to give the player a ton of freedom constantly takes that freedom away with these stupid gimmick dungeons and boss fights. All in all though, Final Fantasy III was a great experience with a few undeniably large bumps in the road. How does it compare to Dragon Quest III though? That's what we're here to find out. With Final Fantasy III having a fairly large advantage in terms of release, Dragon Quest III's journey is still one that's well loved by fans of the series, and is even some people's favorite of the bunch. I'm not gonna lie, I was going into this one pretty sure that Dragon Quest III was gonna be getting an easy win here. I've hated Final Fantasy III every time I tried to play it until now. The Pixel Remaster really did do a great job of ironing out most of the bullshit. Keyword though is most. Final Fantasy III's mandatory job class changes in certain parts of the game, and segments where you've got to be minied or toaded, are still incredibly tedious and just not fun at all to have to do. I will say that I probably ended up enjoying Final Fantasy III's story as a standalone entry more than Dragon Quest III's, but as far as legacy and connection to the other games in the series, Dragon Quest III kinda takes the cake. The Final Fantasy games each being their own unrelated thing can sometimes be a blessing and at other times set it back when comparing it to other franchises. It's nice to not always have to start at the beginning of an 11 or even 16 entry series in order to fully enjoy any of the games. But even then, I would argue that you're still missing references to previous entries. The way Dragon Quest III not only pays tribute to, but completely validates its journey by perfectly tying it into the first two games, gives it a massive win in the story and world department. It's simplified, but also complex at times, yet still understandable gameplay and character building mechanics are also ahead of Final Fantasy III's in my opinion. In Final Fantasy III, I never fully understood how leveling your characters and changing their job classes would affect each character's stats in the long run. Whereas in Dragon Quest III, I know that each time I get above level 20 and choose to change vocations, I'll be cutting my current staffs in half and starting that next job class with those stats but at level 1, giving that character a huge advantage. In Dragon Quest III, they also keep all of the spells and abilities they've learned in each of the vocations, highly encouraging you to try out all the different job classes. Whereas Final Fantasy III only has about a handful of job classes even worth trying out, and once you've begun to level up in them, there's no real point to trying others. The winner is Dragon Quest III. Overall, despite being a fairly easy win for Dragon Quest III, the Pixel Remaster of Final Fantasy III impressed me enough to actually recommend you give it a try. Final Fantasy improved a lot over the second entry with this one, but I still prefer Final Fantasy I's simplicity. After this third entry, the Final Fantasy series would put job classes back in the oven to cook a little more for a later entry, and this next entry in both franchises will be the first to put their focus on characters and their individual stories. With more gigantic adventures ahead of us, and Final Fantasy making the jump from the NES to the Super NES, the next episode of Dragon Quest vs. Final Fantasy will be an exciting one. Both Dragon Quest IV and Final Fantasy IV are tied as my favorites in their respective franchises, so this will undoubtedly be by far the most difficult one to choose a winner in. I also need to mention that since these games are going to be growing larger and larger as the series goes on, I'm not going to be able to cover each and every story point moving forward in this series. These videos take a lot of time and work to make, so in order to cut back on some of that time, I'll be summarizing the story points more, but still focusing on each game's strengths and weaknesses and why they both hold a special place in my heart. Thank you so much for watching this. If you enjoyed it, please remember to like, subscribe, and turn notifications to all so you don't miss the next video. Also be sure to check out the other episodes of this series and share to others you think might enjoy it as well. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.